Welcome back, everyone, to the Fates Voyage Onward World Championship Qualifier Tournament. Gems and Fresh Lobster here to bring you all of the action. And we just had some very intense rounds of 64, rounds of 32, and we're now left with a top 16. A lot of top caliber players already parted from us, but I would say there's still a lot of great names and a lot of great matchups left in the top 16 here, Gems.
Yeah, we still have a whole host of fantastic matches here left for you guys. And as we have a look here at our brackets, we can have a look here. Ultraman, as we saw, just won in the top 32 the round before. We have Barcode still in here. At least I got the CS, another fantastic player. Some UK representation just dotted around as we see in some of the opens of PVH up against Lulu Flippy. And Namiel still in here in the tournament, making it through after their victory that we saw in the round of 64.
And what I find interesting to see is there are many long-term tournament grinders, but also some newer names that, at least to me, are not that familiar yet, making a strong showing here, making it all the way to top 16, and already getting into those positions where the World Championship Runeterra qualifier points are very, very important and valuable.
Yeah, super valuable. They start becoming really relevant at sort of the top 8 amount. The number of points really helps you get into the qualifiers for this season's points, as well as total points amount qualifying spots. So there's a differentiation between the two sets of qualifying spots.
And just as a reminder, the first place qualifies to the World Championship. The second and third also have very good chances because they amass so many Runeterra points. If they also do well in the ladder or some of the other tournaments this season, they should be able to make it. With that being said, we have the decks ready for our next decks. First, we see a Demacia Freljord pile, which I am expecting to be a formidable deck. This time, Udyr as the champion supporting Galio.
Yeah, this is one of the other variants that have been dotted around. We've seen the sort of the Garen Draven variant, and this is the other one with the Udyr. Very similar shell. This runs more formidable units. You got like the Balan in there, the Putrefied Charger. There's, in this case, I can also see the Laurent Protege in there too.
Oh, valuing interaction very highly. I also saw 3 copies of Single Combat and 3 copies of Gentleman's Duel. So a lot of removal for those Jannas, Nilas, and elusive units and Heimerdingers. Mic check here with the second list. Set Seraphim with the one Heimerdinger tech has gotten incredibly popular recently. We're not going to go through all of the tech choices here again. It's just too many to take care of. We do see 2 Nopifies though, and do see a copy of Deny, so can be prepared for like Champion Strength, Inspiring Light, and that kind of stuff. Third deck rounding out the lineup is Jax Ornn. Most interesting part of this lineup is there's no Janna Nila.
Right, we a very distinct lack of Janna Nila here. From Mike Check, probably either straight up banning it or trying to aim into it. Most likely, I would suspect they're trying to target it a little bit here.
Could imagine that is the idea. It's a very flexible lineup though, can have a very flexible ban. As we switch over to Jin's decks that look somewhat familiar, we're starting off with a Jax Ornn pile. Some different tech choices, but mostly a very similar deck. What is a bit unusual is just seeing 1 copy of Omen Hawk. That card rather has been very, very popular recently, ever since it gained the ability to block elusive units.
I mean, the card's always been sort of a staple in Freljord practically since the start of the game. It's had its ups and downs, but it's just a fantastically strong card, especially with the buff. And we see the next Demacia style deck. I like to call Jax Ornn basically a Demacia style deck because it basically has a similar game plan to most Demacia decks. And here we have the other version, the Garen Draven Galio, with obviously we've got Balan in there. We've got 3 weapons in this version here.
Dark Aegis is also a very uncommon one. Of course, summoning Jarl, I think is the name, when attacking for a 5 cost, just good against spell-based decks, because that Darken, when it attacks, makes all of your opponent's spells cost 2 more, which can really stop the removal of a deck like Janna Nila or Set Seraphim. And the third deck, no big surprise here, is Janna Nila. 1 copy of Eye of the Storm, 1 copy of Tidal Invocation, 2 copies of Aftershock, so still comfortable to be playing against landmark-based decks. We do see only 2 Wizened Helmsmen, a bit uncommon, but Jin's a lot of success with the list so far.
Yeah,
going into the picks and bans.
There was an additional Vic crash in there for a 2-2 that gives you a slipstream, which can be helpful and also just provide an additional little bit of chip damage. So yeah, ban-wise, we got Nyla Jana on one side, but on the opponent's side, I suspect you're most likely going to ban the Ugia Galio.
This is actually pretty interesting because both bans depend a bit on what each player thinks their opponent is going to ban. I mean, you said yourself, right? Like the Jax Ornn and the Galio deck don't hate to play against Janna Nila. But it's also, there's a lot of mirror-ish kind of situations going on. Of course, the Demacia lists are very differently built. It's really hard to say what's going on through these players' minds. Do you have any like early favorites for bans? What do you expect to see from these players?
Well, I suspect Mike Check to have most likely either his Jax Ornn or his Ugia ban, depending on the threat level on both sides. There isn't much weapon removal, so I could see either one being banned because there are 3 weapons in the Ugia Galio version, if I remember correctly. It's a really tough decision because the lineups are very, very closely mirrored. I'm curious to know which version is favored in the Demacia Freljord style mirror, right? The Ugia version or the Garen Jarvan version.
Yeah, since these decks just popped up very, very recently, we don't really have a lot of matchup stats and experience and so on these decks, so it's a bit up in the air knowing what exactly is going to fare how well into what. We do see the Udyr being banned. Who would have thought Udyr actually pulling a ban? Janna Nila does stay open, and the first matchup we see is Janna Nila into Jax Ornn.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there were no heavy metals being run in Jin's version here, so that means no weapon removal options. Has to just go straight up regular removal, which allows Mike Check to keep those weapons in hand and use them later on.
Yeah. And I would say Mike Check's deck is probably slightly favored here. Jin can pull it out of this Janna Nila deck, also with Premier Piloting skills, but there are just some things that Jin's deck does not really have an answer to. For example, the Wild Claw's Ferocity that we already see in Mike Check's hand. Jin's deck, like Janna Nila's, often struggles to take care of very tall units. And that is why the Jax Ornn deck, once you get a big Ornn, a big Jax, a big Alpha Wild Claw, can just hit the Nexus super hard, very effectively.
Yeah, that Wild Claw's Ferocity can come in huge later on. And just the big 0-for-1 with the weapon equipped can be fantastic. We see the Explorer coming down, the Solitary Pioneer from Mike Check. Instant picking, obviously, the landmark removal because Mike Check recognizes the only real other options, I guess, healing, which you don't need right now. And I guess keyword removal, which again shouldn't be too much of a big issue because in general you're going to have bigger statted units, and landmarks perfect for stopping Jin getting that big temple turn.
Interestingly enough, we did not see the Pool Shark get played last turn, but do see it shuffled away now with the Janna. Not quite sure. Do you get the thought process behind it?
It looks like they're just trying to set up a big cheap turn, most likely, with the Marina and the 5-drop, just to set up, I guess, quick, fast Janna level up. But again, that's could end up backfiring a little.
Possibly. Aftershock does take pretty good care of this combat cook, but Mike Check really found the perfect weapon here. The buffed and forged scout weapon is going to turn this challenger, the Scholarly Pioneer, into a 4/4. Oh, Pool Shark.
Just draw the zero-cost Pool Shark anyway. Oh, well, yeah, we're going.
That's what we were mentioning earlier on. This Wild Claw's Ferocity at focus speed is so hard to take care of. If it was, I don't know, slow speed or whatever, if Jin would have any chance to answer with something like a Howling Gale, they could maybe take care of it. But here, Jin is gonna just take 2 giant hits from this Wild Claw's Ferocity and gonna be playing the rest of the game on the back of their feet rather, because of the constant threat that these Overwhelm units provide.
Do you just go double Cloudwinder here? Yeah, I think you do, right? I don't think the other option is Gale, yeah, and instead of Cloudwinder next turn. But there was a line just to play double Cloudwinder this turn.
Yeah, but I think you Yeah, I get it. I get it. I do think you really want to get rid of this White Claw so that it also sets up this beautiful open attack. The issue is now you are in a position where you have to take care of pretty much all overwhelm units as fast as possible. Because as soon as they get HP buffs like Sky Splitter or Fury of the North, they're easy to get out of reach, right? And we already saw one
close
Howling
to leveling here too as well. So
true. And plenty of resources in Jin's hand that allow doing so. Cheap Mystic Shot, more card draw. I don't think we ever have the time to play Temple, at least in the near future. But we also do need to cycle and find more Howling Gales to make sure that no overwhelm units stick. Thanks to production, we do see that Janna is currently at 4 out of 6, so there is definitely an option to level up Janna this turn and do so very effectively with a Mystic Shot into the Exalted Cloudbinder.
yeah, still needs one more, which it really depends. But yeah, you were talking about Overwhelm. Jax is coming down this turn. Has the leveled up weapon available to him, as well as Ornn coming down on the following turn. We know Ornn is leveled up thanks to the big scout attack score in the previous turn.
Yeah, that White Claw really carried everything, and even in deck leveled up Jax and Ornn really set up the win condition for Mike Check. So very astute play. I really liked seeing that very aggressive line of play. Jin is a bit in desperation mode, drawing through a bunch of cards, making use of the discounted Eye of the Storm. I'm also expecting this Cloudwinder because the only chance to survive here is to find a ton of removal.
Yeah, the big problem is obviously Ornn is leveled up. Ornn has got tough, which makes it incredibly difficult for you to remove.
Yeah. Pretty much would have to be some insane gotcha plus Howling Gale sequence.
Triple gotcha. Howling Gale.
This is so strong, the Jax here with a hugely threatening keywords here.
Let this draft guide your hand.
And the Ornn can also copy the scout weapon. We do see the level up come through. Let's double check Mike Check's hand, Jin's hand in a second, but I don't think this is enough. Did find a Whirlwind, did find a Gotcha, but that is not enough to take care of these two giants. They're just gonna slam in Jin's Nexus here in a second, and we do see the quick surrender come out. The Jax Ornn with a perfect start, and Mike Check also perfectly playing into this matchup, finding the weaknesses of the Janna Nila deck, and great mulligan. Great execution of the game plan.
Yes. Now, Jin has obviously a few options. Can stick with the Janna Nila, can choose to just say, okay, let's play it again. Some play, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant. It's more of a nerves thing. What are you feeling more comfortable on? Which deck are you thinking you're more likely to get a win on? Maybe try even the score out to 1 apiece. So we could see the switch over to the Galio list. Wouldn't surprise me, but nope, staying with the same one.
I do think that Jin probably even has higher odds of winning on this deck because of the inclusion of 2 Aftershocks. And Jin is probably very comfortable playing this Janna Nila deck in the first place. This is the most common, most popular, and most played deck almost since it got released. Took players just a little bit of time to figure out the true strengths of this archetype and how to build it.
Oh, Mike Check going for the Aftershock here, losing one of their landmark removal options here to remove the Nila. I don't mind it. However, they don't have a second backup for Temple currently, so that could end up becoming a problem later on.
Yeah, it's interesting. This similar situation came up in my prep for this tournament weekend, and Bratchet Kata, a shout out, was mentioning that in this situation, it is often correct to remove the Nila if you already have your landmark, and Mike Check can protect his own landmark with double Notify. Because if the landmark gets mirrored, if both people have the landmark down, it's usually going to be the Set Seraphim deck that gets a bit more value out of it total, long term. So as long as you don't get overrun immediately, the longer the game goes, like both players having a landmark should slightly favor the Set Seraphim player.
Yeah, and there's double Marina in hand from Jin.
So much for not being overrun. Jin has an enormous hand size here. Did pick up an Aftershock, which is at least going to force an Notify. But Mike Check finding the Rocket Barrage. That might come in huge against the 2 Marinas.
That's fantastic, right? I don't think there's a better option here outside of Caustic Rift, but Rocket Barrage, what's fantastic about it is it can remove also Miriam as well, the 2/3.
And maybe even, I don't know, the title invocation that we do see trying to take out the Acorn. Of course, it's very hard for Jhin to play around a one-off like Rocket Barrage. What Jhin has got going for them is that they still have a decent refill here. They can still play 3 units, they can still hit the Nexus significantly. But you would have hoped to get more out of this turn, especially now that your hand size is rather low in Jin's shoes, while Mike Check is going to be shuffling a enormous amount of cards.
Or maybe not shuffling in this case, because we see the Aftershock coming down here to remove the temple.
No Nopify.
They'd lost. Yeah, they didn't draw it again, so that is no protection available for Mike Check. Temple's going down, and hopefully Jhin will be able to draw something decent on the following couple of turns to try and snowball this. Again, even though Mike Check's lost the Temple, managed to get a big hand's worth of reductions in the updraft available, and has a decent hand of removal available to them.
Time trick is going to be very, very important here. Mike Check is going to try to find something like a Seraphim set. Oh, that being said, what is being found on the top of the deck? A second Sunken Temple, of course, would also be an amazing find. Wow. Great options here. Seraphim, Divine Draft can be super huge in this matchup, but we already saw a bunch of Mariners taken care of. And Portal Pioneer, I think, was the third option. Comes down for some very clutch landmark removal here. And again, we're in this mirrored situation where both players lose their landmarks, and I would personally say this is looking like a comfortable situation for the Set Seraphim player right now, because you have the game state under control and you're just going to be playing and drawing the more impactful cards at this point.
I just like Jhin now recognizing, okay, I need to actually kind of play these fleeting spells, otherwise they will be lost because they're losing the landmark. I love that landmark interaction with the Temple. If you have the Temple will trigger first, so if you do have fleeting cards in hand, you effectively don't have fleeting cards in hand.
True. Now that the Temple, the landmark is gone, but Janna is being found, and that is just in the nick of time because Jhin is about to run out of resources, but can maybe get the draw cycle going again with this Janna updrafting and drawing a bunch of cards.
Yes, while that is true, there isn't actually a big answer for Mike Check to deal with Janna either. So Janna here will be able to stick. Question is, what do we updraft? Okay, we're going to get that gotcha down to potentially a 0 cost very quickly.
And I think, I didn't quite see it. I'm not sure if it was a Howling Gale or a Whirlwind in Jin's hand. But if it is a Howling Gale, that's also an option to take care of the set. I'm sure Mike Check is going to try to play the set to take care of the Janna. Oh, and there's another Sunken Temple popping up in Mike Check's hand, which is perfect. It's like the next few turns are going to present some perfect opportunities because Jhin does not have a very threatening board, which means Mike Check can eventually take a breather and develop that Sunken Temple.
Yeah, most likely losing Janna here. I don't think it's a great option. You could try and draw, but then that's another Janna, I believe, in hand too. So it's a tough decision.
It's a tough decision indeed. I do very much like the lines of play here from Mike Check. Those sets could technically also level up and generate a showstopper this turn, because Mike Check started the turn with 9+3 mana. For those who are not too familiar with Set, he is, even if he's not leveled yet, the mana already counts towards the showstopper progression. So if he does spend another 7 mana this turn, and that should be pretty easy to do with the coin in hand, the second showstopper can get generated, or rather the level up and the showstopper can get generated.
Yeah, we're just seeing the second Sunken Temple here coming down. Set's gonna level up. No showstopper yet.
Mystic shot. Will we see it though? I think it's worth
Tag
it.
out, probably.
Oh, yeah, tag out is even better. That's a good point. And as mentioned, the showstopper does get generated. The coin did not even have to be invested, I think.
What's great about tag out is obviously with Sunken Temple on the board, not only do you essentially don't lose cards in your hand because you get a coin as well back in your hand and the unit, you get the additional draw now because of that, because you essentially aren't losing cards. So you get 2 more draw than you would normally.
It's a bit sad.
So fantastic there.
flash bomb, and it whiffs on all of the pool sharks. It was a bit sad for Mike Check to shuffle that level set back into the deck. Nonetheless, does get rewarded with a bunch of other good finds. Jin was very patient with developing the Janna. I loved to see it, and that did pay off big time, right? Because the showstopper was already played. Janna was able to stick around here. The card draw was already ensured by the Exalted Clownwinder. And now leveled Neela is finally going to join the battle. Probably going to be met by a stun here, though.
Yeah, that concussive palm is most likely going to shut the Neela down. It's going to generate a turret, the fearsome turret, which is, again, going to make this very, very tough because Jin right now has no way of dealing with Heimerdinger.
Heimerdinger is going to stick around, but Jin does have a wide board and does threaten to remove some of the blockers. The Nopify coming in very clutch here, though.
Wind need not be seen to
Jin does have the Mariner in hand, but is now entirely out of steam. The Neela is still stunned. This attack does not look threatening at all because of all of the defensive capabilities that Mike Check just built here this turn.
Yeah, this is kind of the danger zone here for Jin. Hasn't been able to push nearly enough damage in the earlier stages of the game. Mike Check is now stabilized, has got Sunken Temple on the board. Just generating more cards in hand, reduction in the healing. I love that option from Mike Check. And now, as we can see, there is Seraphine. There's another Mystic. There's a Caustic Rift.
Surrender does come out from Jin, just realizing that the Sunken Temple engine is too much to take care of right now. Mike Check with a super convincing 2-0 victory, and Jin not being able to get a victory through with that Janna Neela deck.
Yeah, super unfortunate there for Jin. This is the thing, is I think Mike Check was hoping to try and beat this deck and paid off, and that's probably why they're made it all the way now here to our top 8.
And Mike Check with some super impressive play, in my opinion. The first game was super duper clean, playing exactly to the win condition and the weaknesses of the Janna Neela deck. And the second game, investing this early aftershock and still always being in a situation where your opponent did not have a Sunken Temple advantage, right? By finding that Portal Pioneer, by finding the Sunken Temple of their own. What was also interesting, that very, very final sequence, which also was a sign of a very good player. Sunken Temple was online, Heimerdinger was on board. Mike Check just played the Tellstones without even playing the bots and without using the generated Ritual of Renewal. The only reason to do so is to increase your hand size, shuffle all of that stuff back into your deck so that Sunken Temple draws you more cards. That is something that many newer players don't often see as an availability, as a possibility rather, and that is usually the sign of a very strong player. Just perfect use of the resources.
Not only that, is I believe they had a zero cost Tellstone anyway, so getting the Ritual Renewal, which is pretty much the only option you're really going to be using in that matchup, into the deck, getting updrafted and getting a reduced cost as well can help in later on should you draw it in the future.
So impressive showing from Mike Check, making it into top 8. We have our next featured match here, and that is German long-term tournament grinder Schlulu Flippy versus PVH. We just saw the end of the game with Schlulu Flippy taking a W. I'm not quite sure what the score is. Let's see if we're going to jump into a game 3. We will see that in a second. A bit of an unfortunate timing to jump in right as the game ends. And here we are.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know exactly what the score was there, but we shall hopefully find out soon enough. Very well played from both of those two players. And we've been told it is 2-0 to Schlulu Flippy.
Okay, so another quick and convincing game. I did manage to catch that. I think Schlulu Flippy was playing Demacia and Freljord as well, so with another aggressive strategy, some type of formidable build, most likely. It is a bit unfortunate that PVH is out, the only representative of Great Britain. But the Germans continue the dominance over the EMEA circuit, and another strong showing by a long-term tournament veteran in Schlulu Flippy going into top 8.
Yeah, a lot of quick games here in our top 16 and also our top 32. So hopefully, if we're lucky, we can get one more match going. But if not, how have you been feeling about this Meta Lobster? How have you been enjoying what you've been seeing today? Because I know you're back now in Runeterra officially. This is your return. Casting. So how have you been feeling it?
For me, the biggest difference is how much quicker Legends of Runeterra has gotten. There is a definite, like, tempo-based decks have gotten so much stronger that most decks, even, like, pure aggro doesn't exist that often anymore, but there's a lot of this mid-rangey slash combo stuff. And Nila Janna just perfectly embodies this. A super high APM deck to play, like a super... You have a lot of decisions and actions in every turn, and that is a very fun deck to play. Sometimes also frustrating to play against, because it's kind of like a miracle out of nowhere in some turns and you just get overrun. But it is a great addition to the game. And with that being said, we run into another super high profile match, actually. Ultraman, who we saw earlier on, still duking it out here against Talpinator.
This is a very interesting sort of decision here, I guess, from Talpinator, because Pytos... Oh, okay, it's from Ultraman, okay. Sorry, I got that the wrong way. Ultraman hitting the Whirlwind there with the skip.
Yeah, this is a matchup we don't see too often. Two elusive decks fighting against each other, two Bandle City-based elusive decks. We see one PNZ version against a Freljord version. I would say the Freljord version intrinsically packs more power, it has more value because of the inclusion of Bone Clubs as well as cards like Glacial Saurian.
Yeah, we see the Pioneer coming down, most likely going to either be like the remove keyword or the healing. Those are sort of the main two options. And also we've seen the Ultraman's hand, 2 copies of Sharesies here. Wonder if any of those were generated or how many were in the main list.
Great question. I do assume 1 or 2 are probably going to be played just to share Bone Clubs around. Ooh, the Teemo is getting pulled here. Defensive Eye of the Storm coming out to ensure a little bit of a trade. Talpinator can keep the draw chain going here with the augmented clock link, but it does look like Ultraman is currently just pulling away value-wise, just having some sturdy and tall units on the board, having more elusives than Talpinator, and being in a comfortable position here.
Taking a look over at Talpinator's list here, it seems to be running, it is very much the sort of elusive span. It's Teemo Yumi, as we know, and pretty much running sort of the draw package. It's got Clock Link, it's got the Eye of the Storm, it's got triple blowback as well.
Yeah.
So a much more aggro oriented version.
And I think for Talpinator it was a bit unfortunate to find all 3 Teemos early on in the game. It's not really the card that you're looking for in this type of matchup. If your opponent also has elusives, Teemo is usually gonna down trade into most stuff. It is because cards like Skip have a 1-2 stat line. Teemo does not trade into that very effectively unless leveled, but he doesn't find an opportunity to get leveled. So a low value hand on Talpinator's side, trying to make the most out of it here with the augmented clock link being juiced up by the Yumi, but Ultraman might be too far ahead already.
I suspect this Bandle Commander is leveling. Oh, Yumi's not leveled up yet. Okay, so 1 attack off most likely. It was looking to be very, very close.
Saurian also representing some serious overwhelm damage, and Talpinator can take care of this attack quite effectively with the Heroic Refrain. Going to stop the Yumi from leveling, most likely. You were right, she's a 2 out of 3. I don't see... Well, Sharesies is going to get swapped over to the Saurian here, making sure that that unit survives, while the Bandle Commando still retains a ton of buffs, and that is going to be some very favorable trades here for Ultraman. Talpinator is going to have to follow up with some burn removal here, which is always a bit of an unfortunate thing, because you're going to have to invest the burn that you would prefer to send towards the Nexus to take care of the board.
Yeah, I don't know how Talpinator claws back from this point of the game. Yeah, the Skip just hitting removal options as well has made it very, very difficult for Talpinator. I believe one of them's got the Whirlwind, another one's got a Mystic. Again, just making this a very tough spot for Talpinator to claw back from. The stats on the Ultraman side of the board are just a bit too large, and this Shazi has just been coming in huge.
Yeah, this has been making sure that the board keeps snowballing for Ultraman, and we see a quick surrender here. The Freljord version is reigning supreme and getting a much-deserved victory. I think it's 1-1 right now. The last matchup we are going to see is going to be this PNZ Yumi Elusives deck versus Janna Nila. What's your experience in this matchup so far?
I don't think I've really ever played this specific version personally. I've played a lot of John Nila, but I've not really played against the PNZ version of Teemo Yumi. In general, I would say the first couple of turns are going to be pretty crucial for the Teemo side. If they get like an Acorn or a Teemo hitting a couple of times, get those discounts going as soon as possible, it sets them up to be in a really good position, because a lot of the removal options in Seraphine Nila cost the cheapest is just Mystic, right? Everything else you have to get some type of reductions on to deal with 1/1 elusives.
Talpinator showing. Well, you wanted 1 acorn. How about 2 acorns? Another very important thing here, though, is that I think in this specific situation, both players would have preferred to attack on odd turns. And Ultraman is going to get the Nida online, get some Slipstream shuffled right away, while Talpinator's doublet, the duo of the 2 acorns, is going to have to wait before they can really start hitting and generating these mana discounts on the spells.
Ooh. Yeah, and we're going to see most likely double Acorn on the next turn as well. Just go as wide as they can. There's not many elusive options, if any, I think, in Ultraman's list. So we'll have to commit Mystic shots.
Both players with kind of a banger start, to be honest. Both players can go... Well, mostly Talpinator can go pretty wide, but Ultraman with the early Nila shuffle, as well as the Mystic shot options in hand. Talpinator electing to go for an open attack with a Vandal Commando, it seems. I'm wondering if that is to keep Heroic Refrain mana open and just neglecting the 2 discounts from the Acorn.
Double Mystic shot here coming up from Ultraman. Really scared of the value being generated here from Vandal Commando with the Alcats and just potentially snowballing with the spell shield units.
Talpinator does have decent refill here with the acorns. Also can get a draw cycle going with the augmented clockling next turn. Ultraman is now in a bit of a tricky position, though. Really wants to find a slipstream here. Let's see if he can get it, and it is being top decked.
Wow. Okay, so this is probably one of the scariest. Okay, Ultraman. Okay, Ultraman.
The marks of a good player, right? Just top deck the right cards when you need them. Mariam can take care of these fleeting cards and convert them into some good value, some good power. Mariam, I could definitely see Mariam be played for spell mana refill here. Instead, Ultraman elects to go for the... Yeah, okay, this makes a lot more sense. Takes care of the Yumi as well, prevents her from buffing up this Acorn, and just keeps the pressure low, basically, while Ultraman does have a very good swing himself.
Yeah, this is, I guess, a point in the match where I think Talpinator maybe should have gone for the Acorns the turn before. Would have gotten some more cost reductions available to them. They may have been able to push 2 more damage. We don't know where the Mystics would have gotten, obviously, from Ultraman, but would have potentially put them in a more favorable position, forcing Ultraman to make a bit more tougher choices.
Yeah, just like if Talpinator would have been able to play the Heroic Refrain defensively on that turn, would have been very interesting. But here we are with 1 Acorn, Hex Technician, still standing, going for the Clockling instead. Could be a second Acorn, could be a skip, which is very, very interesting here because it can find some super high value cards like Sunken Temple and Wise
If it hits
Enhancement.
Temple right here.
It does hit the Temple. That's huge, right? Like, we have caster vision. We know that Ultraman cannot draw effectively besides this. So we're not sure if that's actually going to be the pick, but it is the pick after all. There's no removal. There's not a ton of draw here on Ultraman's side. Do you play the Mariam here for some cycle?
Probably, right? I don't think there's any reason not to. The Helmsman doesn't really go... Okay.
That's replaced with another Helmsman, but at least we're drawing deeper into our deck, and the Pool Shark is going to find another Helmsman, but it's discounted and updrafted.
Well, what spells have we played? We played Slipstream, and that's it.
Yeah, right. We didn't find any Howling Gale, we didn't find Whirlwind, we didn't find Eye of the Storm. Good point, actually, Gems. The Helmsman does not do that much, but it is still a solid stat line. Oh, the Formless Bait and Tidal Invocation. Some of the more uncommon things that you don't see too often. popping up from Helmsman. But of course, Ultraman, that's the reason why he's staying in the top. But this top 16, and we're just casting, is that he, of course, paid
I think
attention.
that's why you still. I think you still always play it because it's just a 5/5 body no matter what.
Exactly.
But this point for Talpinator is going to be really, really tough. Yumi will allow for additional defense here. Probably play it on skip, most likely, to avoid any removal. But I don't even think you care that much about Temple going back anyway. So it's going to be a tough decision.
Yeah, even the Formless Blade is kind of good here, though, right? Just pinging some target
it's
off.
huge.
The question is, where does Yumi go? Ultraman could pop the Temple back out. I don't think it's that important anymore at this state of the game, because Ultraman is already has such a board and threatening so much pressure that there's not that much draw needed anymore. Well, Talpinate, well, the issue for Ultraman is he still can't take care of elusives very effectively.
While he can't take care of elusives very effectively, but he's putting a ton of pressure on his attack, which will force Talpinator to have to block some of it. Probably the minimum amount, probably just the Helmsman, I suspect.
Yeah, probably Acorn going to be blocking the Helmsman here. Would you agree with Ultraman swinging in now? Would you have preferred to see some removal first? Maybe the tidal invocation on the Acorn?
It's a tough decision. I mean, you can still play the Tidal Invocation here for 1 more damage as well, by the way.
True. Good point, actually. Formless Blade comes out. I do think we are going to see the Tidal Invocation here. And what we mentioned earlier on, Ultraman does not care about the Sunken Temple at this point anymore. The game is not going to last that long anymore. For Ultraman, the most important thing to accomplish here is to keep the Nexus HP as high as possible, like Ultraman's own Nexus HP, while pressuring Talpinator and potentially getting into burn reach.
Ooh,
The Helmsman does get picked. No, the Slipstream does get picked up. Okay. The next Helmsman, again, is not going to be finding any burn. That is some very heads-up play here by Talpinator. These skips are coming in huge so far. And a very aggressive hand to push out a lot of damage this turn.
Yeah, I actually really love that choosing the Slipstream there. It denies any sort of draw into Whirlwinds. It denies the... I mean, we already know what Ultraman can get from Helmsman, which is the Invocation and the Blade. And we know, obviously, with Heroic, a Refrain in hand can play around that quite comfortably if you're Talpinator. So you have a pretty strong attack here no matter what. From Talpinator's side, that you can handle pretty much anything Ultraman will do. Yeah,
it's so good for Talpinator because the Heroic Refrain is just going to negate the combo of Slipstream and, Formless Blade and Tidal Invocation, right? It's going to probably try to take out Teemo, but then Talpinator can just give it +1 HP, and the Bandle Scout is still going to connect with the Nexus. That's most likely what's going to happen. Is Ultraman going to have enough defensive resources here to fend off these attacks?
I think that's game. I think Talpinator wins right here. I think this is just lethal.
With the Mystic Shot and the Refrain, that's 6 damage in hand. It is 9 damage on board.
Yeah.
And that is a total of 15. So as long as Talpinator is... Well, there's still a decision to be made here, right?
Ultraman could
pre-commit.
hit okay. Ultraman could hit okay. That's
exactly. Unlikely to happen, but that would be one theoretically possible line of action through which Ultraman can survive this attack here. And Talpinator is considering whether or not to play the Refrain here. I'll be honest, this is also a bit of a tell, right? This taking this much time, Ultraman can use that as a read that Talpinator is considering whether or not to pre-commit a Refrain.
So let's do the maths. If there's a pre-commit,
and pre-commit does come through.
You can remove 3 damage here, which is enough to survive on Ultraman's side.
It's a tough decision to make. It's wow. I'm actually not sure if I like the pre-commit.
Was there a commit option which would have? I mean, you could have kept Teemo alive, I guess, if you committed on Teemo. And that would have been 1 more damage.
No, it's still the same because then a skip dies and the Kelp Maiden dies. No, you're right. The skip doesn't
only
die.
one of them, yeah.
It's actually a good point. But then a skip would have died and Ultraman would have got... No, it would not have died. So there's no slipstream. Yeah, I think I agree with you. It would probably been slightly better to pick Teemo as the target. Not that it matters too much here. The big thing was whether or not to pre-commit in the first place or not. And now that gives Ultraman an opportunity to go for another big swing here and force Talpinator to use all of these elusives as blockers.
Yeah, most likely all of them going to be blocked. Obviously, we know one of the skips is going to be retrieving more draw. The other one's going to be retrieving a temple.
Mystic Shot does come out defensively, and that means that Talpinator is going to be put down to 1 HP. On the flip side, if this Teemo survives with the Uni buff, that would also be lethal. This game is so incredibly close.
It
It's
might
amazing.
just be over this turn if the slipstream hits a whirlwind.
Yup, if the slipstream hits any type of burn, any Mystic Shot, Mariam for an additional draw as well. Ultraman has so many options here. It's another slipstream.
What terrorizes you?
That's what we're gonna see here from this draw chain that's being unleashed. Outwinder is not it. The second slipstream does get played. There are 3 potential draws left as of right now. Another slipstream. Still 3 draws left potentially.
Ultraman just really going for
Oh,
it.
I have to
Doesn't
start
hit it.
location. There are whiffs.
They're all whiffs. Oh boy. Okay.
The thing is, if Ultraman now passes or only plays the Mariner, he can still remove the Teemo. He can take care of the only elusive threat, right? With Formless Blades, Tidal Invocation, there's still some elusive, some removal on Ultraman's side. Oh, this game is so incredibly close. That must be nerve-wracking for both of these players. I think neither of them is qualified to the World Championship yet. So, like, now going into, what is it? Going into top 8, right? This is a huge bump in Runeterra points and getting closer to that direct invite as well.
Oh, the pass comes out
I
here.
love it. It's so good because Ultraman still has the Howling Gale available.
Second
But we
Teemo.
do see a second Teemo, and Ultraman is still going to be desperately fishing for removal. The thing is, the Teemo plus Yumi is only 3 damage, and then it's going to come down to Puff Cap and Draw RNG. Oh, this is incredible. I love this.
Oh, this is such a tough spot as well. Do you Howling Gale this Teemo now to play around the Yumi?
Honestly, probably.
Or do you just play Mariam and then Howling Gale afterwards? Because Teemo hitting for 1 will put you down to 3. You're now in blowback range with 5
There's only-
shrooms in the deck.
There's only one top-decked card left that we don't have info on Ultraman's side. Talpinator played
It's the
the
fear
Teemo
of
from the left
blowback, isn't it? It's the fear of blowback.
I think so. The fear of blowback is the fear of maybe a second elusive, like... no, not really.
It's just blowback. It's just Teemo
Yeah.
hitting for 1 and then blowback.
That makes perfect sense, actually.
Because you haven't seen a single one this game.
This is so tense. Because then, if it would have been Sting Officer instead, that card kills you, right? Sting Officer with a Yumi buff. Can't take care of it properly. What?
Oh, valuing. Oh, they're hoping Ultraman draws a single shroom into blowback on the following turn.
But why not go for the second Teemo with the Yumi buff?
I don't know, but I think that was it.
Ultraman does go for the enormous open attack. There's nothing to be found here, and does take away the series. Wow, okay. There's a lot to unravel here. That was...
There is, yeah, it's
it
very tough
felt
decisions
for a
being made
long
from both
time
sides.
like Talpinator had this game secured. Right? Then there was this
Yes,
tough
it did.
decision on whether or not to pre-commit the heroic refrain, which was already very debatable. Because, like, okay, it's easier for us to say with caster vision, but I think Ultraman would have kind of had to commit the 2 removal spells even on the first swing because of the threat of burn on Talpinator's side, right? Because he could easily represent something like blowback plus Mystic Shot or so to finish out the game. It's a very tough decision to make, though. It's also a bit of a read what you think how your opponent is going to react. On this very final turn, I was a bit surprised to not see the second Teemo be played and swing in with the Yumi. I think that has a much higher likelihood of working because then your Mystic Shot also becomes an out. I don't remember how many copies were left, though. That was a very tough, like some very niche situations that were really hard to calculate and to really find the best place here. Incredible series though. I was like, this was so tense to watch even. I can't even imagine what the players have been going through.
Yeah, that was, I don't even know where to begin there. That was incredibly tough and well played to both sides there. Ultraman will be making his way all the way through to the quarterfinals, and we're going to be hopping to a short break very quickly. And when we're back, we'll be having the rest of our matches for today. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere.